Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into what is literally shaping up to be the most electric match of the entire tournament, Portugal versus Spain. I mean, every football fan on the planet is hyped for this round of 16 clash. Because let's be real, it genuinely feels like a heavyweight semifinal that we're getting weeks early. We've got two Iberian giants stepping onto the pitch, and only one is going to survive. So let's break down exactly how this tactical war is going to unfold. But before we get completely lost in the tactical weeds, I've got to ask you a really direct question. Has Portugal actually looked convincing to you? Like, point blank. Put your hand on your heart, even if you are a diehard Portugal fan, and really think about it. Because despite the absolute mountain of talent on their roster, their performances lately have been anything but smooth. They've been pretty unconvincing, especially when they hit those high-pressure moments in recent matches. And you know what? The data totally backs up that hesitation. Out of 2,500 supercomputer simulations run ahead of this matchup, Spain actually has a 49.1% chance of winning this outright. Now, obviously, football's played on a grass pitch, not a hard drive, and we all know major tournaments absolutely love a chaotic upset. But this number, it gives us a massive starting point to understand just how heavily favored this Spanish machine currently is.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Form, Stats, and Struggles.
The contrast between these two teams right now is frankly staggering. Spain is on an absolutely flawless run. 0 goals conceded, a positive expected goals difference of 1.8, and they're facing the lowest number of shots in the tournament because their pressing and their rest defense, meaning how they set up defensively even while they have the ball, is just top tier. Meanwhile, Portugal's glaring weakness is their defensive transitions. When they lose the ball, their tracking back is super vulnerable, and it usually ends up in these frantic panic mode clearances in the box. And Spain is perfectly built to exploit that exact flaw. And look, that flawless execution by Spain isn't some lucky fluke. They are currently riding a staggering 35-match unbeaten streak that stretches all the way back across multiple tournaments under this current setup. They are an absolute fortress right now, bringing just immense momentum and an impenetrable defensive record into this knockout stage. And man, history is really not doing Portugal any favors either. If you look at the last 12 competitive matches between these two sides, Portugal has won exactly one game. One. You literally have to rewind all the way back to the 2004 Euros to find it. The other 11 matches ended in either a Spanish win or a draw. So Spain has historically known exactly how to handle their neighbors. Which brings us to Section 2, the four-quarter tactical game. For this next part, you really have to think of the pitch as a giant strategic chessboard. We need to talk about the four-quarter game. Top managers don't even look at matches as 2 45-minute halves anymore. Because of the massive hydration and commercial breaks injected right into the middle of each half, the game is basically broken down into 4 distinct segments now. These breaks are huge momentum shifters, and managers are literally planning their entire tactical setups around them. So here's how this actually builds across a 90-minute timeline. In quarters 1 and 2, teams will deliberately play this really slow, sluggish, low-intensity game. They just want to limit the opponent's threat and save their legs. They are totally fine taking a 0-0 scoreline into the locker room. It's only in quarters 3 and 4, usually right after the halftime break, that the intensity explodes, momentum shifts, and the game just devolves into chaotic, attacking football, which is exactly what we saw in that recent Portugal-Croatia match. So the core philosophy here is simple. Avoid early damage at all costs. As a manager, you'd way rather deal with a wide-open, chaotic game in the 70th minute than concede a cheap goal in the first 10 minutes. Because going down early completely destroys your game plan, especially against a team like Spain. So for sure, expect a very slow, highly calculated, chess-like start to this massive fixture. Moving on to Section 3, Midfield, the ultimate battleground. When they have the ball, Portugal's midfield is just brilliant. Bruno Fernandes is absolutely crucial for their progressive passing to launch those wingers. Vitinha is their vital ball recycler. Actually, he's more like a metronome, routinely making 10 to 12 line-breaking passes a game to keep their retention super high. And João Neves has to be the guy making those late runs to crash the box. But their key issue, it's their synchronous out-of-possession work. When they don't have the ball, gaps start popping up everywhere, and their defensive tracking gets severely tested. And that perfectly illustrates why Spain is so incredibly dangerous. Just look at their midfield setup. You've got Rodri, who is the absolute, undisputed master at breaking up opposition counterattacks. Then Pedri is giving you those essential driving runs forward. Whether they slot in Fabian or Olmo, they're getting gritty containment plus a real attacking threat. And the biggest difference? Unlike Portugal, Spain is highly comfortable just sitting back and defending deep if they have to. They just don't panic without the ball. So, it all boils down to this one fundamental rule for this matchup. The midfield dictates the transitions, and the transitions dictate the game. Whichever midfield trio can successfully plug up those gaps out of possession while keeping the ball under insane pressure is going to dictate the pace and ultimately take the win.
All right, Section 4, key head-to-head matchups.
Because hey, beyond all the broad tactical chalkboard stuff, football is still a game of human elements, right? And we've got 4 epic clashes that are going to define this night. We have the blistering pace of Lamine Yamal taking on Nuno Mendes, the absolute legend Cristiano Ronaldo battling the rising star Pau Cubarsí and Laporte, the creative engines going head-to-head with Pedri versus Vitinha, and finally, 2 absolute brick walls in goal, Unai Simon going up against Diogo Costa. That battle out on the flank is particularly fascinating to me. Lamine Yamal himself actually came out recently and said, "Nuno Mendes is the most difficult opponent I have ever faced." I mean, wow. There is just an immense amount of respect there, and watching Yamal try to pick the lock against Mendes is going to be a thrilling subplot to this whole game. Then, right smack in the center of the pitch, we have this wild generational clash. 17-year-old Spanish center back Pau Cubarsí is facing Cristiano Ronaldo for the very first time. And there's this great little pre-match storyline where Cubarsí actually talked about how badly he wants to swap jerseys with Ronaldo after the game. But obviously, before he gets that jersey, this teenager has to face the absolute physical and mental duel of his life against one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the sport. So how on earth does Roberto Martinez handle the wide areas against all these Spanish threats? Well, expect a very structured 2-step flank strategy from Portugal. Step 1, start Neto. Neto gives you the defensive work rate you desperately need in that slow, grinding first half to match Cucurella's pace and track back. Step 2, in the second half, when the game finally bursts open, you bring in Francisco Conceição, Chico, off the bench to just create absolute 1v1 attacking chaos against a tired Spanish backline. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the final verdict. Let's circle back to that supercomputer data for a second. While Spain does have that 49.1% chance to win outright, the combined probability of Portugal either securing a win or dragging this thing to a draw is 50.9%, which just brilliantly illustrates how incredibly tight and impossible to separate these two powerhouses truly are. We are talking razor-thin margins here. So for Portugal to actually survive this and advance, their conditions for success are incredibly strict. They literally have to tap back into that original clutch nature they have in big moments. Every single winger has to execute their defensive tracking flawlessly. No lazy jogging back, none of that. Bruno and Neves have to crash the box so Ronaldo isn't just left on an island against 2 center backs. And honestly, realistically, their best path to victory might just be dragging this incredibly tense game all the way into a penalty shootout. So, based entirely on the source analysis and everything we've looked at today, here is the completely impartial prediction. Spain's flawless form and their tactical setup definitely make them the heavy favorites if this game gets decided in 90 or even 120 minutes. But if Diogo Costa and that Portuguese defense can hold the line and force this into penalties, Portugal's immense shootout mentality and experience absolutely give them the edge. So this brings us to the ultimate question for you guys. What do you think? Will Spain's flawless, possession-heavy tactical machine prevail and march on? Or is Portugal's clutch mentality and individual brilliance going to steal this ultimate Iberian Derby? Let us know your thoughts. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and enjoy the match.